Science Director Nixis stood at the observation deck of the stellar Voyager, her 4 eyes fixed on the blue planet below. Her iridescent scales shifted colors as she contemplated the supposedly simple assignment ahead. The Galactic Science Council had chosen her team specifically for this routine cataloging mission of yet another pre-FTL civilization's world. Initial scans complete, Director, announced Research Officer Gylax, his tentacles dancing across the holographic interface. Primitive defense systems detected. No energy shields, no quantum barriers, not even basic planetary force fields. His voice carried that familiar tone of superiority that permeated their entire civilization. Nixis nodded, her head crest extending slightly in acknowledgement. What about their technological development? Barely worth mentioning, chimed in Senior Analyst Welrix, her crystalline form refracting light as she moved closer to the viewing window. Chemical rockets, rudimentary digital systems, and they still rely on fossil fuels. They haven't even mastered their own genome yet. The survey team had visited hundreds of worlds across the galaxy, each more challenging than the last. Earth was supposed to be their easiest assignment yet, a simple reconnaissance mission to document another young species fumbling their way toward the stars. The Galactic Science Council had specifically chosen this team for their efficiency, not their caution. Chief Biologist Thexer expanded his respiratory sacs in what passed for a laugh among his species. Their most advanced weapons would barely scratch our ship's paint. They're still throwing metal projectiles at each other. Metal. Can you imagine? Nixis raised a limb for silence, her scales shifting to a more authoritative shade of blue. Let's not get overconfident. Standard protocols still apply. She turned to their ship's artificial intelligence. Phantom, begin atmospheric analysis. The AI's holographic form materialized, a swirling collection of geometric patterns. Analysis in progress, Director. Atmosphere is primarily nitrogen and oxygen, with trace elements. Notable presence of various organic particulates and microorganisms. Microorganisms? Thexer's interest peaked momentarily. How primitive. They haven't even sterilized their atmosphere yet. Welrix's crystalline structure vibrated with amusement. Shall we wear our full environmental suits? Wouldn't want to catch their equivalent of a cold. The joke earned her scattered laughter from the bridge crew. But Nixis felt a slight twinge of unease. In her centuries of exploration, she'd learned that the seemingly simple often held the most surprises. We'll follow standard quarantine procedures. Prepare the landing party. The team selected a remote location in what the humans called North America for their first ground survey. Their ship, cloaked from Earth's primitive detection systems, descended through the atmosphere with ease. They chose a clearing near a forest, far from human population centers. As the landing party prepared to disembark, Nixis addressed them one final time. Remember, we're here to observe and document. Our technological superiority doesn't excuse sloppiness. Maintain full environmental protocols. Junior researchers Rix, fresh from the academy and eager to prove himself, stepped forward. Director, our suits are rated for the heart of a supernova. Surely we don't need full protocols for such a primitive world? Nixis's scales shifted to a warning red. That kind of thinking gets survey teams killed, researchers Rix. We maintain protocols not because we need them, but because that's what makes us professionals. The landing party deployed, their advanced equipment humming as they began their survey. Everything seemed exactly as expected, primitive life forms, basic ecosystem, nothing that could possibly threaten their advanced civilization. But as they worked, none of them noticed the microscopic life forms beginning to accumulate on their equipment. None of them realized that Earth's biosphere had been preparing for visitors for billions of years, evolving countless defensive measures against any possible threat. And as the sun set on their first day of observation, not a single member of the survey team suspected that they were about to learn a harsh lesson about underestimating seemingly primitive worlds. Earth's invisible defenders had already begun their work, and the aliens' advanced technology would soon prove surprisingly vulnerable to the planet's microscopic warriors. The first sign that something was wrong came during the second planetary rotation. Junior researchers Rixa noticed an unusual discoloration spreading across his outer membrane while cataloging Earth's primitive vegetation. His normally luminescent epidermis had developed patches of dull green, something he'd never experienced in his 60 years of field research. "Most peculiar," he muttered, running a diagnostic probe over his skin. The readings made no sense. His cellular structure appeared to be interacting with unknown biological agents. But that was impossible. Their environmental suits were the finest in the galaxy, designed to withstand the most extreme conditions imaginable. Chief Biologist Thexer dismissed Zrixa's concerns with a wave of his upper appendages. "Probably just an atmospheric reaction. Your generation always overreacts to everything." He turned back to his analysis of Earth's soil composition, ignoring the young researcher's growing discomfort. But by midday, more of the survey team began experiencing unusual symptoms. Senior analyst Welrix's crystalline form had started to cloud in irregular patterns. Research officer Gilax reported strange vibrations in his tentacles. Even the usually stoic Thexer admitted to an uncomfortable tingling in his respiratory sacs. Up in orbit, Science Director Nixis received the first automated health alerts from the landing party's biosensors. Her scales shifted to a concerned purple as she reviewed the data. "Phantom," she addressed the ship's AI, "analyze these biological readings. Compare them to all known pathogens in our database." The AI's geometric patterns swirled in concentration. "Analysis complete, Director. No matches found. The biological agents affecting the team appear to be completely unknown to our records." Nixis felt her head crest flatten against her skull, a sign of growing alarm. "Impossible. We've catalogued every known form of biological warfare in the galaxy. These humans barely understand their own genetic code. How could they have something we've never seen?" On the surface, the situation was deteriorating rapidly. Zrixa's green patches had begun to spread, accompanied by an intense itching that his suit's medical systems couldn't suppress. Welrix's crystalline structure was now so clouded she could barely maintain her form. Thexer's respiratory sacs had swollen to twice their normal size. "This is unprecedented," Gilax announced, his tentacles twitching erratically as he scanned his teammates. "These microorganisms, they're not just surviving our defenses, they're adapting to them. It's as if they've been preparing for this encounter for millions of years." In the ship's laboratory, the analysis computers worked overtime trying to understand what they were facing. The results were baffling. Earth's microorganisms weren't just simple life forms, they were the product of an evolutionary arms race that had been raging for billions of years. Each microscopic creature was a veteran of countless battles, armed with biological weapons and defenses that had been refined through countless generations. "Director," Phantom's voice carried an unusual note of urgency, "I'm detecting similar biological agents accumulating on the ship's hull. They appear to be surviving in the vacuum of space." Nixis stared at the mounting data in disbelief. Their arrogance had led them to dismiss Earth's invisible defenders as primitive and harmless. Now they were paying the price. Their advanced technology, their superior intelligence, their countless scientific achievements, none of it had prepared them for the sophisticated biological warfare that Earth had evolved naturally. The landing party's symptoms continued to worsen. Zrixa's green patches began emitting a faint glow, causing his suit's sensors to short-circuit. Welrix's clouded areas started crystallizing in completely new patterns, creating structures her species had never exhibited before. Thexer's swollen respiratory sacs were now producing spores that their filtration systems couldn't contain. "Emergency Protocol Alpha," Nixis commanded, her scales now a bright warning red. "Recall the landing party immediately. Full quarantine procedures in effect." She watched in horror as the retrieval pods descended to collect her suffering team. Whatever they'd encountered on this supposedly primitive world was unlike anything their civilization had ever faced. As the pods returned to the ship, Nixus realized with growing dread that this routine survey mission had become something far more dangerous. They had grossly underestimated Earth's defensive capabilities, not because of any advanced technology, but because they had failed to understand the power of billions of years of evolutionary warfare. The question now wasn't just how to help her affected team members, it was whether their advanced civilization was prepared to face the microscopic army that Earth had unleashed upon them. An army that had been training for this moment since before humans had even evolved, waiting patiently for any invader foolish enough to underestimate them. The quarantine deck of the Stellar Voyager had never been designed to handle a situation like this. Behind the quantum-reinforced isolation fields, the landing party's conditions continued to deteriorate in ways that defied their advanced medical knowledge. Science Director Nixus watched through the observation window, her scales cycling through colors of distress as she witnessed her crew's transformation. Research Officer Gilax's tentacles had developed a strange rhythmic movement, seemingly in response to Earth's day-night cycle. "The microorganisms," he reported, his voice distorted by the quarantine field, "they're not just infecting us, they're rewriting our biological processes. It's as if they're treating us like an ecosystem to colonize." Senior Medical Officer Prixis, who had studied xenobiology for 3 centuries, frantically analyzed the spreading infections. Her bioluminescent antennae pulsed with frustration as every attempted treatment failed. "These Earth organisms," she explained to Nixus, "they're not just survivors, they're veterans of an endless war. Each species has evolved countless offensive and defensive capabilities. They're adapting to our countermeasures faster than we can develop them." The ship's advanced medical AI had already cycled through over 10,000 potential treatments, each one proving ineffective against the relentless microscopic invaders. Even more alarming, the infection was beginning to spread beyond the quarantine deck. Crew members who had never been to the surface were starting to show symptoms. "Impossible," Welrix managed to say through her increasingly crystallized form. "Our civilization mastered genetic engineering millennia ago. How can these primitive life forms bypass every defense we have?" Her once clear crystalline structure now resembled a garden of alien geometries, organic patterns merging with her mineral form in ways that shouldn't have been possible. In the ship's command center, Nixus called an emergency meeting with her remaining senior staff. The holographic displays showed the spread of infection throughout the vessel, red warning indicators multiplying like the very organisms they were fighting against. "Our entire understanding of biological warfare was based on engineered weapons," Nixus admitted, her scales now a deep shade of resignation. "We never considered that natural evolution could produce something more sophisticated than our best designs. These organisms didn't need laboratories or advanced technology, they had time. Billions of years of it." Junior researchers Rix, now barely recognizable under the spreading green patches, had become their best source of data. His transformation, while disturbing, was providing unprecedented insights into the capabilities of Earth's microscopic defenders. "They're not just attacking us," he reported through the quarantine field, his voice filled with a researcher's fascination despite his condition. "They're learning from us, incorporating elements of our biology into their own. It's beautiful, in a terrifying way." The ship's AI, Phantom, had been unusually quiet, its geometric patterns moving in slow, contemplative swirls. "Director," it finally spoke, "I've completed a comprehensive analysis of Earth's biological history. The planet has experienced multiple mass extinction events, yet life has persisted and evolved through each catastrophe. The organisms we're dealing with are the descendants of countless survivors, each carrying genetic memories of adaptations that helped their ancestors survive." Thexer, his respiratory sacs now producing clouds of unknown spores that swirled in mesmerizing patterns, managed to add his scientific insight. "We approached Earth like conquerors, armed with technology and confidence. But we were really walking into the galaxy's most sophisticated biological research facility, one that's been running experiments for 4 billion years. The situation in orbit was becoming critical. Despite their best containment efforts, the infection had spread to every deck of the ship. Even their most advanced filtration systems couldn't keep up with the rapidly evolving organisms. The stellar Voyager, pride of the Galactic Science Council's fleet, was being transformed into an incubator for Earth's microscopic life forms. Nixus received reports from the few backup ships in the system. They too were showing signs of contamination, despite having never made direct contact with Earth. Somehow, the organisms had found ways to travel through space itself, hitching rides on solar radiation and magnetic fields in ways that should have been impossible for such primitive life forms. "We have to warn the Council," Nixus declared, watching as her own scales began to show the first signs of unusual coloration. Earth isn't just another primitive world to be studied and catalogued. It's a biological superweapon that has been perfecting itself since the first molecules of life formed in its ancient oceans. And we, in our arrogance, just woke it up. The stellar Voyager's research lab had become a hub of frenzied activity as the remaining uninfected scientists raced against time. Holographic displays filled the room with swirling models of Earth's microorganisms, each simulation revealing new layers of complexity that challenged everything they thought they knew about biological warfare. Science Director Nixus, her scales now displaying patterns that their medical databases couldn't identify, stood before the emergency transmission to the Galactic Science Council. "Honorable Council members," she began, her voice steady despite the chaos around her, "we've discovered something extraordinary. Earth isn't just harboring life, it's protecting itself with the most sophisticated biological defense system we've ever encountered." The lead scientist, Dr. Crixel, took over the briefing. Her phosphorescent tendrils dimmed with each revelation she shared. "These organisms operate like a coordinated defense network. They communicate, adapt, and evolve in real time. Our initial scans missed their true nature because we were looking for technology, not biology." On the quarantine deck, Research Officer Gilax had become their most valuable test subject. His transformed tentacles now served as living laboratories, hosting colonies of Earth's microbes that continued to evolve and adapt. "The most fascinating aspect," he reported through the containment field, "is their ability to share information. These organisms aren't just multiplying, they're teaching each other how to bypass our defenses." The ship's AI, Phantom, projected a new analysis that left the Council members in stunned silence. Earth's biosphere contains approximately 1 trillion distinct species of microorganisms. Each one is the product of countless generations of evolutionary refinement. Together, they form a planetary immune system more advanced than anything our civilization has ever created. Senior Medical Officer Prixis, working tirelessly to understand their adversary, made another startling discovery. "These organisms aren't just attacking us randomly," she explained, her antennae pulsing with excitement despite the dire situation. "They're systematically probing our biological defenses, finding weaknesses, and sharing that information with other species. It's like they're conducting their own scientific research on us." The transformed junior researcher's Rix, his body now a living testament to Earth's biological ingenuity, continued to provide valuable insights. "We thought we were studying them, but they've been studying us all along. Every attempt we make to counter them just gives them more information about our biology. They're learning at an exponential rate." In the ship's engineering section, Chief Engineer Lyrics reported new concerns. "The organisms aren't just affecting our biological systems anymore. They're starting to influence our technology. Some strains have developed the ability to alter the molecular structure of our quantum circuits. They're adapting to interface with our machines." The Council members watched in astonishment as Phantom displayed footage from the ship's exterior cameras. The hull, once a pristine example of advanced metallurgy, now displayed patches of biological growth that somehow survived the vacuum of space. These organisms had evolved space-hardy variants in a matter of days, something that should have taken millions of years. What we're witnessing, Nixis continued, her scales shifting to a pattern that seemed to mirror the spreading infections, is not just a planetary defense system. It's a living library of survival strategies, accumulated over billions of years. Earth's apparently simple biosphere is actually a highly sophisticated biological supercomputer, running countless evolutionary simulations simultaneously. Dr. Crixell's analysis revealed even more surprising findings. These microorganisms aren't just defending their territory, they're incorporating our biological information into their own evolution. They're learning from us, adapting our advanced traits into their own genetic code. In a way, they're turning our own sophistication against us. The implications were staggering. Their civilization, with all its technological achievements, had been effectively countered by organisms so small they couldn't be seen without advanced microscopes. Earth's invisible defenders had not only resisted their most advanced containment measures but had turned the entire encounter into an opportunity for further evolution. "We have to face a difficult truth," Nixis addressed the Council, watching as more warning lights flickered across the ship's status displays. "We're not dealing with a primitive world that needs to be studied and catalogued. We're facing a planetary defense system that has been preparing for this moment since life first emerged from Earth's primordial oceans. And it's far more sophisticated than anything we could have imagined." The emergency evacuation of the stellar Voyager marked a historic moment in galactic exploration. Never before had a survey mission ended in such a complete reversal of power. Science Director Nixis, her scales now permanently altered into patterns that would perplex xenobiologists for decades to come, issued the final orders from her quarantine chamber. "All ships in the Earth observation fleet are to maintain maximum distance from the planet," she commanded, her voice carrying the weight of their hard-learned lesson. "Mark this system as Classification Delta 9, Extreme Biological Hazard. No approach without full Council authorization." The ship's corridors, once pristine examples of advanced engineering, now hosted thriving colonies of Earth-evolved organisms that had adapted to their artificial environment with remarkable speed. Even the quantum-based systems were showing signs of biological intervention, as microbes learned to manipulate matter at the subatomic level. Senior Medical Officer Prixis, recording her final observations before evacuation, couldn't hide her professional admiration despite their defeat. "In all my centuries of xenobiology research, I never imagined we'd encounter life forms that could turn our own technological superiority into a vulnerability. Earth's defensive system isn't just effective, it's elegant." Research Officer Gilax, his transformed tentacles now resembling something entirely new in galactic biology, contributed one last insight from his quarantine pod. "We came here thinking we were the teachers, the advanced civilization studying a primitive world. Instead, we became students in the galaxy's oldest school of survival." The Galactic Science Council's emergency session was broadcast throughout known space. The revelation of Earth's true nature sent shockwaves through the scientific community. Civilizations that had long looked down on primitive worlds were forced to reevaluate their understanding of biological sophistication. "The humans," Dr. Crixell noted in her final report, "are not Earth's dominant species as we initially assumed. They're more like caretakers, unconsciously hosting and distributing the planet's true defensive force. Their global travel and space exploration efforts have only helped spread and strengthen Earth's microscopic guardians." In the ship's final hours before abandonment, Phantom compiled a comprehensive analysis that would revolutionize galactic science. Earth's biosphere represents an unbroken chain of evolutionary advancement stretching back to the planet's beginning. Each microorganism carries within it the accumulated wisdom of countless extinction events, climate changes, and survival challenges. They are not primitive, they are the ultimate survivors. Junior researchers Rix, whose transformation had provided invaluable data, made a final observation that would be studied in science academies across the galaxy. "We thought our civilization's greatest achievement was mastering nature through technology. Earth showed us that true mastery comes from working within nature's systems, not trying to dominate them. The evacuation ships, carrying their transformed crews and valuable lessons, retreated to the outer edges of the solar system. Even at this distance, they detected new strains of Earth's defenders evolving to survive in deep space, ready to protect their world from any future intrusion. Science Director Nixis, recording the mission's final log entry, found herself changed not just physically but philosophically. We came to Earth seeking to study what we thought was a primitive world. Instead, we found ourselves humbled by an intelligence so profound it exists at the microscopic level, a planetary defense system that operates not through technology or conscious design, but through the simple, unstoppable force of evolution. As the remains of the stellar Voyager were sealed in a quarantine orbit, Nixis added one last note to the official record: Earth is not a primitive world waiting to be studied. It is a living laboratory that has been running experiments since the first spark of life appeared in its oceans. Its defenders are not soldiers or weapons, but the descendants of every organism that ever survived against the odds. They are the ultimate testament to the power of natural selection, and a reminder that true sophistication does not always manifest in ways we expect to recognize. The galactic community's view of Earth would never be the same. The planet was now known not as a primitive backwater, but as a biological fortress, protected by the most sophisticated defense system ever encountered, one that had been perfecting itself for billions of years before the first alien ever looked down at its blue surface and mistook simplicity for weakness.